Hello and welcome to Just Keep Writing,
a podcast for writers
by writers
to keep you writing.
I'm Marshall.
I'm Sameem.
I'm Brent.
And I'm Wil.
And I am super stoked this evening to welcome back one of our favorite guests, longtime guests. I don't even know what number episode this is that you visited us, but we're stoked to have you back. Mr. Maurice Broaddus is back in the house. So welcome back, sir. How you been? Yeah, we're cheering.
I'm doing well. Hey, I'm on your show and I'm not bawling through the entire episode. I feel blessed about that part. So
far.
So far, so good.
Exactly.
Was Maurice one of the people that Will has made cry?
No,
yeah.
I think Brent made me cry technically.
I did.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was a shared moment.
It was.
So since folks may not have heard your voice before, we do have some of the new listeners. Maurice, do you mind just briefly introducing yourself, what you do, what you write?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay. So my name is Maurice Broaddus. I am I'm a writer, I'm a librarian, I'm an Afrofuturist. I work for a community organization called the Kepler Institute. We do a lot of youth leadership training. I'm a librarian at a middle school. I headed up a project where I recently restored a historic library in Indianapolis, and then became its librarian. And then I'm a writer, so I've written, I believe, 18 books, had over 100 short stories published. You know, just trying to chill, do the thing.
Yeah, awesome. And so Will is going to spearhead the first part of this. I'm just stoked to have you back, man. And if anybody has not listened to the episodes you've been on before, definitely it's time to go back and listen to those. So I'm going to put that out there right now. But go ahead, Will.
Okay. So, Maurice, since we last chatted, which was episode 89, which was about the first Astra Black book in the trilogy, and episode 91, which was the middle grade Unfadable, which were like almost 100 episodes ago, which is wild.
Right.
Since that time, I want you to describe your writing in 3 words since we last talked in 2022, which is wild because that's 3 years.
Has it been that long? Damn.
Yes.
Damn. My writing in 3 words: frenetic, impassioned, fun.
Awesome.
Okay. So, frenetic. Talk to me about that word. I don't even know if I spelled it right in the chat, but whatever.
Close enough.
I don't think so.
Frenetic, because I love writing. I love writing. And so I tend to, and I've accepted the fact that, maybe I am cut a little differently from a different cloth or whatever, but I'm just like, no, I'd love to do the thing. I'm always doing the thing. I was supposed to turn in the 3rd book in the trilogy, A City Dreaming. I was supposed to turn that in end of last year, which I mostly did ish. But I didn't start writing it until like the end of summer. Even though I had the whole year to do this book, I started at the end of summer because I'm just like, man, I want to write these 6 short stories, and oh man, I want to write this novella, and let me just do these things. And let me see if I can just squeeze in another project, and that sort of thing, because that's the pace. I don't even think of it as a pace, or even that I'm just bubbling over. It's just, I just love doing the thing. So, any excuse I have to write, I'm going to keep doing. And I'll balance that out with any excuse I have to procrastinate from what I'm supposed to be writing. I will do that first. So my procrastination just looks like productivity, but it's ultimately just procrastination. So.
And what about impassioned?
Impassioned. I'm always telling folks, what we bring to stories is, it's our voice. It's, our worldview. It's, how we see things, how we feel about things. And I'm just like, my writing is deeply embedded in community. So I'm always writing from a place of my neighbors or my community or fellow artists, being challenged by fellow artists. So there's so much going on in the world that I just have to, I don't know, I just feel compelled to speak on or react to. And so I don't know, it's just like for me, my writings and passion is like a live wire that I get to play with.
Oh, I like love that. Sameem, you had a question.
Oh, we can finish the words. Sorry. I'll come back
no, it's okay. Okay, so the next one was fun. Talk to me about that.
Because you know what? When all's said and done, I'm like, I hear writers talk about how the anguish that they're going through and the torture they put themselves through. And I'm sure I'm not looking at any of those writers right now on any screens. No. But I'm just like, you know what? For me, writing comes from a place of joy. And if I'm not coming from that place of joy, I'm like, well, why would I purposely put myself through something arduous and torturous and all that kind of stuff? And like, no, writing for me is fun. And that's probably one of the reasons why I keep doing it so much, because I just enjoy it.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Sameem, ask your question.
Well, I was going to ask, and I guess this applies to both the frenetic answer and then the fun answer. I was curious if it's always been that way for you, or if it was something that evolved over your journey.
Okay, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, it evolved, because I've had those arduous, torturous days where writing was the devil's burden, and it's evolved over time. But I've noticed though that the more I lean into the fun aspects of it, the more I actually end up producing. And so part of it was learning just to get out of my own head for a start, because I realized early, there was probably when I was writing my very first trilogy, especially when I was writing book 2, it's like I had no choice but to get out of my own head and get out of my own way. And so I'm just like, I'm just going to deep dive into this and just go with wherever the words take me. And that was just so freeing an experience. I was just like, why don't you write like this all the time? So I was like, all right, well, why don't I just do that? And so I've tried to stay mostly in that lane of writing should be fun and writing should be in passion. And because man, I remember the time I almost quit writing.
Tell us about that.
I was doing a ghostwriting project. And since we're on the air and I haven't been drinking, I won't go into details about who I was doing this ghostwriting for. But the project did not end well. We'll say that. Basically, I hate you so much, Nick.
Nick is here in the background ghosting, by the way. He wasn't here for the intro, so Nick is in the chat because he knows things. But I'm glad you're here.
He knows things. But yes, Nick. But it ended poorly. It ended up with me and the client and all the client's posse, we'll say, basically shouting me down and telling me how much I suck as a writer. And
damn.
And then I had this, obviously I had the moment of some self-doubt, and then I'm just like, and I was like, man, that was a miserable experience. And it wasn't even that I was ghostwriting per se. It was just that it was just miserable from beginning to end. And I'm just like, and like I said, I was on the edge of quitting. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it one last shot. Let me just try writing something just for fun. And like that project was Buffalo Soldier. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm back in the fun lane. I'll just keep doing this.
Nice.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about on the podcast about how play is important for getting out of our heads, getting around writer's block. So that's really good to hear. Another good example of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's times when I'll co-write some project with some folks, especially friends of mine or students of mine, when they're like, just really stuck in their own head and they're not really producing anything. They're like, I don't know, I haven't ever finished the story and da-da-da-da. Like, well, let's write something together. And so we'll write something together. I remember one time a friend of mine and we were writing together and he's like, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, well, this is the writer's equivalent of throwing poo at a wall. This is part of my brainstorming process. So I'm just throwing whatever I want at this blank page, and whatever sticks, that's what will become the story. And he's like, you write like that? And I'm like, doesn't everybody? This is the fun part. I'm just, how do you think you don't just wake up one day and go, you know what we need? Starships powered by jazz music. You don't just wake up, you got to evolve into that. That's some quality poo flinging as far as I'm concerned. Sorry if I'm losing you with all my technical language there. But.
No, I think quality poo flinging is important for our listeners for sure.
Okay. So the last time we talked about book 1, can you because we're going to kind of talk about tonight about writing book 2 and what it's like to write a trilogy and do that like middle novel. So can you tell everyone, give a little brief synopsis of Sweep of Stars, which was book 1?
Okay, yeah. So I mentioned I was the resident Afrofuturist at the Kepler Institute, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the whole trilogy is rooted in my work at KI, and so it's modeled on the work that we do. It's except sort of like reimagined, Kepler reimagined as an intergalactic community and everything. And because it's rooted there, I started asking a question, and it's like, what if we win? Because we're working in community, we are challenging systems, we're reimagining systems, we are constantly just doing all this work in the community. But what if we win? What could the world look like if we could build a community on our terms? And so it just became a fun conversation to have with neighbors and stuff, and evolved into, what if like artists and scientists and teachers became the highest aims of for vocations? And then what if the community was led in a very, very intentional intergenerational sort of way? And then, of course, starships powered by jazz music. And so that became a lot of the world building, which is conversations with my neighbors. And then, and so what sort of evolved was a story of this community called Muungano. And it's sort of like imagine like a Pan-African community that's built on their terms. So they have like the Dreaming City, which was their initial city. It's on the moon, and it spreads out to Bronzeville on Mars, and then Titan, a moon of Saturn, and Oyiji, which is an asteroid belt. And then once they get this community established, then Original Earth decides, we want to reclaim this space. Now that y'all have turned it into something useful. And so the trilogy, Swoop of Stars, basically follows 3 storylines. So you have Muungano and this tale of succession after the death of one of their founders. And then you have the Hova military unit, and they're exploring the other side of a wormhole. And then you have the Cypher, which is a research starship that's studying the Oran Gate, which is like this artificially created wormhole. And so that's basically the overall storylines of Sweep of Stars.
And you also write from like different points of view throughout book 1.
Yeah. So each chapter is told from a different point of view character. And we have some characters that speak in first person, some characters that are first person plural, some characters that are second person, and then much of the book is still in third person. And one of the reasons I chose to do that, besides being heavily influenced by N.K. Jemisin, because she's brilliant and I want to be her when I grow up. But besides that, the person choice becomes basically it's a kind of not really a symbol, but it indicates where that person is in terms of relationship to the idea of community. So like those people who speak in first person singular, it's like, I believe in community, but I still have trouble seeing outside the lens of me. Third person is just people who are like, no, we're just part of community. So they can just tell the tale in terms of community. If they're talking in second person, it means they believe in community, but they still feel somehow detached from community, not fully a part of community. And then third person plural is so embedded in the idea of community, they can't see themselves outside of it. So it's not even I, it's we do this and we do that. So that becomes a running thread through the story.
And so when you finished book 1, it gets released and you're starting to work on book 2, which is Breath of Oblivion. What was it like to start doing book 2? Like, do you feel confident, like, and excited when it comes to like book 2 in like the next phase, like you're continuing a story? Are there nerves going into it, or is it like, okay, I can't wait to get to this part?
Yeah. And this will be a completely different conversation when I come back on your show for book 3. So book 2, I'm really excited. I am really excited. I'm just like, oh, where are they going to go next? And how can we deepen the mythology and expand the scope of story? Because the story keeps growing and growing in scope. How can we do that? And so, whereas, Sweep of Stars is kind of like, what does it look like to carve out your own space on your terms? And you have to face down the forces of gentrification. And how do you pass on the torch of leadership for what you've built? Then in Breath of Oblivion, I get to explore different ideas like how do you carry that culture with you no matter where you find yourself? So you could find yourself a political prisoner, or you could find yourself learning an ancient magic system, or you could find yourself in completely uncharted space, or you could find yourself caught between warring alien factions, or even just what does it mean to hold community together despite all these internal and external forces. So I'm just excited, just following the story, just wherever it goes, and adding more things, and just doing the things, and just kind of just letting the story sprawl.
Was it like, did you think about going into the trilogy, like structure wise? Like, did you look at like book 1 as the setup, and for people to get like to get to know the characters throughout the story, and then book 2, it's just like you get to just go and like just expand away?
A little bit, because I realized, with Sweep of Stars, I realized I was doing a lot of world building in that book. I'm just it's thick. And even I were like, whoa, I do a thing. And then with but it is in some ways. In fact, it's interesting because some people would talk about how it's this cosmic, it's really broad cosmic story that somehow feels really personal. And with that became actually when I saw that comment, I was like, ooh, that's my through line. How do I tell these really personal stories against this grand backdrop? And so that was kind of like, all right, so I can cling to that idea and tell the story that way. So even though most of the characters were introduced in Sweep of Stars, with Breath of Oblivion, it's like, no, I get to peel back layers of them, so you get to learn them on an even deeper level. I remember telling one of my friends, because I called him up really excited at one point. I'm just like, oh, I think I just figured out who killed the elder in book 1. And he was just like, wait, you didn't know who killed them when you wrote it? And I'm like, no, I just thought it'd be cool to kill him off. But plus it served the story. But like when I was writing book 2 is when I figured out, oh, I know who did it and how they did it and why they did it. And he's like, oh, so you're going to reveal that in Breath of Oblivion? I'm like, no, I just figured it out in Breath of Oblivion. I'm not going to reveal it to City Dreaming. So, so there's all sorts of discoveries that I'm making along the way too. Because, this story's still unfolding for me as well as it is for everybody else too.
I love that, because I was talking to Nick the other day, and like, I'm always amazed like how Brent world builds, and then like how Nick goes about things to world build. And like Nick read something of mine. He's like, oh, I like this world building piece. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm just writing. Like, I don't think about things like that, I guess. When you world build, do you take a lot of time where you're thinking so much about the world that you're creating and what it's like? Or is it you just get into it when you write?
No.
Yeah.
No, I think.
I think I know part of the answer to this.
I think, I toil, I think some more, and then I write some short stories to help me flesh out my thinking. So Breath of Oblivion. So Sweep of Stars, I wrapped up Sweep of Stars, and I start to write Breath of Oblivion. And like I said, one of the storylines is, you might find yourself learning an ancient magic system. Well, that's great. I have no idea what that means and what that looks like. And so I end up writing 3 short stories to help me flesh out the magic system, how it works and its history and all that kind of stuff, before I even bring it to Breath of Oblivion. And then another thing that happened, I end up writing another short story. This one ended up in Sunday Morning Transport, as a matter of fact, Etoro for Queen. And it was about a side character in Sweep of Stars, and she was only in it for like maybe half a chapter. And I was just like, yeah, there's something about her that interests me. Let me write her backstory. And so I ended up writing her backstory. And then once I wrote her backstory, I was like, well, now I've fallen in love with this character. So now she's about to take a much bigger role in Breath of Oblivion. So that kind of stuff ends up happening. So no, and then plus, like I said, that I mentioned some things, and then I'm like, well, what would it look like? And I had this problem with Pimp My Airship too. Is I do what would originally be a throwaway line, and then I'd come back and go, I want to explore that 1/3 of a sentence that I did. let me see what I actually meant by that, and then dig deep and do stories around that, flesh it out, build out that mythology. And then once I've built it out, I'm like, well, I can't just leave it over here. I need people to. All right, I'll admit it. I'm vain, and I need to show my work. It's like, I did this work, and I need y'all to know just how hard I worked over here, and I'm going to show you all of it.
So how many short stories have you written in that like Astra Black universe? I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I'm in talks with my agent. I'm like, should we just go ahead and collect these? I think I'm at like 15 or so.
Oh, damn.
15.
Wow.
In fact, after okay, yeah, I'll tell you this. So after I turned in the rough draft of A City Dreaming, I'm just like, whew, man, I've been in that universe for like 5-6 years now. Whew, it's good to get that off my shoulders. But then I remembered in A City Dreaming, in A City Dreaming, I mentioned there's a random scene that has aliens in it, and I'm like, there was one alien who I don't even name the character or anything, and I'm just like, I want to write about that alien. And so I just wrapped up, not even kidding, like 2 weeks ago, I just finished another short story in this universe that just gave me a chance to like deepen some culture, expand, let me deep dive into some of the alien races a bit. And I'm just like, oh, but now I understand them a bit better. So when I come to do the rewrite for A City Dreaming, I'm like, oh, now that character has a name and a background and a whole cultural system that they're coming from that, I put it in the book. I'm going because I need to see my work.
So will you go after publishing, like traditional publishing, to publish those stories? Or would you ever think about doing your own Kickstarter to put that collection in first and then go to TradPub?
I think you just gave him an idea.
I'm amused. Let's just be honest. Like our conversation we had the other day. I'm like, I'm amused. Let's be honest.
That, I had not considered that. That would be so much smarter than the route I was planning. Okay.
Keep me around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll be planning on doing a Kickstarter is what I'm thinking about doing.
Announce here first.
Do this collection because I'm brilliant that way, just in case anyone missed that. So
I love it. So you've written trilogies before for the Knights of Breton Court, and I want to know, how do you feel like you've grown since writing Brenton to Astra Black? And what advice would you give your younger self about writing trilogies?
Well, so the two projects came about so differently. And I think the way they came about impacted the way I wrote them. And so here's what I mean by that. So with Knights of Breton Court, when I sold that trilogy, I had written the first book, and it came in at 60,000 words. And that editor read it, liked it, and was like, and came back with, oh, but I hate the ending unless it's like the beginning of a trilogy. And the natural response to that is, well, of course it's the beginning of a trilogy. What idiot would have ended the story there otherwise? And then my agent was just like, was it the beginning of a trilogy or should I stall? And I'm like, yeah, you may want to stall. And so, because what ended up happening is, so let's see, I know the book sold in April. Yeah, it sold in April of 2009. And they said, well, since the trilogy is already conceived, why don't you, we want you to add 30,000 words to book one, turn that in August, and then in December, go ahead and deliver book two. And
wow, Wow.
Yeah, y'all. Book 2 didn't exist.
Yeah.
Book 2 didn't really have an outline.
Plus, not to mention the 30,000 words for book 1.
Plus 30,000 words to book 1. So the last half of 2009, plus I was doing the Dark Faith anthology at the same time. So the last half of 2009 is just a blur of words. And remember, and I talked earlier about getting out of my own head. This is how that started. Because with book 2, I had to completely get out of my own way. I'm just like, I only got 6 months. Actually, by that point, whatever September through December was how long I had to write that book. And I was just like, I'm just going to get out of my own way and just write wherever it goes. And so it was like the most carefree writing I've ever done in my career. And it just went wherever it went. And then, but when I got done, I was really pleased with that. And I was just like, man, I've really overthought a lot of things. And, and then finding my through line for the book 3 became a trouble. But this is, well, that'd probably be our next podcast. It's like, how do you wrap this crap up? Whole different conversation. So right now we're talking about book 2 and the fun of book 2. Oh, you want to jump in now, Marshall? Or
no, I just have I kind of have a question about how, like, I don't know, as someone who aspires to write trilogies ultimately and has a couple of book 1s and parts of book 2s, like, I guess what I'm asking is, you mentioned an outline a minute ago. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of keep it all straight and figure out what you want to expand? Do you lean more in I'm going to write short stories about this stuff, or I know you spend a lot of time world building, but you got the world by now, with book 1. So with book 2, how do you go about planning how that's going to look? Yeah. And we can talk about setting up book 3 later, but I'm just saying, like, because it's in the middle, and how much of that story do you want to tell, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But in neither case did I ever think about book 3. So, which may be part of my problem now that I hear that out loud, because I do not set up book 3. I only worry about book 2.
Okay.
And so I'm just like, how am I going to get through book 2? And then the outline is a bit of a thing too, because the outline with the first trilogy, I already had book 1 written, so it was just a matter of fleshing out book 1, and book 2 I just wrote wholesale. Mm-hmm. With Astra Black, when that trilogy sold, the only thing that existed of it was the first 3 chapters of Sweep of Stars and an outline for just Sweep of Stars. That's all that existed. And then, then it went to auction, and then there were like 5 companies bidding on it. And then I ended up in the corner bawling, because my wife could not figure out what is going on with you right now. And I'm like, because people are bidding on this book, and this book does not exist. There is nothing here.
Oh, I couldn't imagine.
Right. So this book does not exist. There's no book 1 that I can just turn over and then edit. It doesn't exist yet.
Right.
And there are people bidding on this book. And so I was really, we'll just say, a little freaked out. Oh, man. All right, Sameem, just so you know, I'm actually fairly cool. I just need you to know that right now.
For our listeners, Sameem is meeting Maurice.
Usually when someone says they're cool, that means they're cool, definitely.
Right. So. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you can appreciate this. So the image of me curled up on a ball, I mean, just, I don't know what we'll do with that. And Marshall will be editing out that part for the podcast.
If you want it out, it can be out.
So
I couldn't imagine having people bidding on something that doesn't exist, though. Like that to me sparks so much anxiety, because how difficult it is to write words in general. But
don't study too much about the U.S. economy then.
Well, and you know what? It actually kept me from writing Sweep of Stars for a bit too. Until a friend of mine said, hey, you know what? They're not bidding on the book. They're bidding on working with you. So whatever you come up with is what they're bidding on. And that took a lot of the anxiety out of me. And I was like, oh, well, in that case, I can go nuts.
Yeah. I was
Once
going to
the
ask,
check clears.
They knew your resume already, so they knew you could do it, even if the book didn't exist.
Right. And that's one of the things which they also reminded me of, because at the time, all I could think of is this book doesn't exist. We'll forget that I've been doing this for over 15 years at the time. But in my head, and and I think I'd written I've written about probably 12 or so books by that point anyway. So I'm also like, but for me, every new book project starts at the same place, a blank page, and me wondering whether or not I know how to string sentences together. That's my process. Every single book. Like, can I even do this? What does this look like? So.
And how do you feel about like the reception of how it's been received? Like, are you happy with how the process of publishing and then marketing and everything has been going?
For Breath of Oblivion? Or in general? Okay.
Well, in general, and also Breath of Oblivion, because, like it's a trilogy. So sometimes, people are always worried about, are people going to pick up book 2? Because, know.
Yeah, well, I mean, even my editor was like trying to tamp down my concern because he's just like, it's a book 2. Book 2s do what book 2s do. Da, da, da. I'm like, all right, this is not instilling me with the confidence you think it is, but I get that you're trying to lower my anxiety about it. But okay. And I don't live and die by reviews. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I did look at the early reviews of Breath of Oblivion. I'm like, oh, how's this one going to land? Because I do go out there in a bunch of different ways, but when the reviews start coming in positive, I was just like, okay, whew. All right, well, that makes me feel better. But then I just, like I said, I just wrapped the first draft of A City Dreaming. I'm like, well, if I do a thing in the ending of that one, so. Looking forward to see how people receive that. But I'm just like, hey, the last check cleared. So, hey, you get what you get at this point. So
I love that. I mean, I have to say, from reading it, I actually enjoy Breath of Oblivion even more than I enjoyed Sweep of Stars. Because I do feel like it's a deepening. Mm-hmm. And I've read it a couple times. So made notes, not to give to you, but to make notes so that I can learn.
Oh no, I'm familiar with your process.
Yeah, this process is not our process.
No idea how intimidating. Every time I come on this show, it's like I am staring down the Inquisition. And I know at least Will has read this book a bunch of times, and so he probably knows this book better than I do at this point. So I'm not kidding even a little bit. I have a cheat sheet up in front of me just so I can remember who my characters are in the book, just in case. He's like, Maurice on page 329. Son of a...
No, I figured I wouldn't do that to you this one because I want to do it for the third book. So this is going to be just a really process writing interview.
Okay.
No, but I definitely made a lot of notes because I think there's even just a couple lines in the first book that suddenly devolve into a much deeper storytelling in the second book. And I don't want to give it away yet because I actually want to see how the third one plays out before I actually grill you. That'll come next time. So yeah, I really do. I really think this one was a really big deepening and it even expanded the universe even more. And I really appreciated that. And I think that I love that how much fun you had with it, because that also kind of makes me feel a little relieved, I guess, for when I'm maybe writing a trilogy or I'm writing something that's so sweeping like that one day. Yeah, I loved it. So novella, go ahead, Maurice.
No, I'm just gonna say. So one of the things about the world building aspect is so you craft this big universe, right? And you try to make it as detailed as possible, make it feel lived in, give it a sense of history and place and all that. And then you tell that first story. Well, then come the second story. I'm just like, well, there's more of this universe I want to be able to show people. So, because if Astro Black takes place in a couple different spaces in the galaxy, well, I want to show some of the other corners. So let me show some of the other corners that are going on. And so that became my thing in Breath of Oblivion. But even then, by the time I start writing in the third book, I'm just like, there's a whole area of this world that we have not seen at all. So so the outline is kind of pushed by, I need to explore this part of the world, or either I do it in the book, or I'm going to have to write some more short stories so I can see what that part of the world looks like.
Do you think you will go beyond a third book?
Well, if someone pays me, sure.
Mhm.
Let me start there, just to keep it real.
Okay.
But the way I wrote, and I got to say this carefully. The way I wrote the trilogy, and especially the way I wrote A City Dreaming, leaves room for me to either do stories moving forward or stories moving backward in this world. So there's plenty of room for me to, especially involving the soldiers formerly known as the Hova military unit. I could do a whole another series of books just on them and their adventures through the universe.
I love that. Marshall?
Yeah, so speaking of expanding on stuff that you have, I'm curious because I don't know, I'm at this stage right now in my writing where I'm trying to write shorter stuff. Short fiction doesn't seem to work in my brain right now. So I've been playing a lot.
Hang on, I'm trying to wrestle with my stunned face, considering the stories I've read from your compatriots in the last couple of weeks. You say you're struggling with keeping a story short. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
I'm just pausing to absorb that bit of information,
yes.
but please continue.
Marinate on that for a moment.
Right.
I feel called out, just for the record.
But I guess, and we've talked about this in the past, Maurice, as far as world building and stuff. Like, you have all these big ideas and you create all this stuff, and it's a hard time. I have a hard time of pinning down one thing that I want to do in a very short amount. But what I've been kind of falling in love with reading wise lately is novellas, and something that I really want to do in my work right now, because I think that's a fun length to play with. I've seen some authors do some really cool stuff. You mentioned novellas earlier. So I'm curious, how do you feel about that in the market? But also at the same time, would you consider in this world, I imagine you maybe have written a novella in this world and maybe not, but you talked about the one faction you'd like to write more of. Do you see that length being something you could work with? So that's two questions, but
yeah. So to answer the first one, novella has become, it might be my favorite length to write.
Okay.
I don't think I've officially written a novella in the Astra Black universe, but I've written at least three, maybe four novelettes. So
okay.
I stopped just prior to the novella length. But so there is that. But then, when I go back to the Pimp My Airship universe, I have two novellas and a novelette. In fact, the final novella. Can I say that? Yeah, I think I can say that. So the final novella, I don't even know when this episode ends, but when it airs. But well, anyway, so
I can tell you.
Hopefully, I'm about to sign a contract with FNSF for their next issue, and it'll be a novella that's the sequel to Buffalo Soldier, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay, cool.
So.
Right now we're slated to put this out towards the end of, or towards the beginning of May, excuse me.
Oh, okay, perfect. Hopefully by then I'll have signed it. So
if not, let me know.
Right, exactly. Oh, the deal fell through. Cancel all that chat. All right. So, but yeah, novella, because like my middle grade novels are just novellas when all said and done.
Yeah.
And I've written 3 of those. And then I got like I got 2 novellas I was wanting to write later on this year, just in completely different universes. I got 2 novellas I was looking at writing because I do love playing with that length.
And do you, when you set out to write something that length, does your prep, world building, and outlining, is it similar to your novel length stuff, or do you modify it in some way? Inquiring minds want to know, because some of us are trying to write novellas.
Yeah, I'm going to probably annoy you with this answer, but
you might.
I pretty much do the same level of world building with a short story that I do with a novel.
That's what I thought you were going to say. Okay. That's fair.
But I mean, when you think about that though, that, cause like Pimp My Airship started off as a short story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When it first came out, it was a short story. But that world building was pretty intense. And so, I would literally take a line or two out of the short story, and then do the work out of that. So like when I talked about Jamaica, and like, well, we never got to see that. Let me write a novelette that explores that line. And then I had a line about the 5 civilized tribes. Like, well, let's write about that. That became Buffalo Soldier. And so, so like little bits that, that seem like throwaway lines in the story itself. And they aren't really throwaway lines. They're just hinting at the world building I can't show you in this story, but I still want you to see that I built this thing, and I need that acknowledged somehow. So those throwaway lines hint at the work, frankly, the work that I did, but it also allows the world to feel more lived in. It feels more real because it's like, oh well, but I'm like, well, as the reader, if you're reading that, you go, well, I'm curious about that, but I see the story's going this way, but ooh, there's a new layer, a bit of nuance to this world, So I do. So yeah, that's how I end up doing my world building.
Okay, I thought that's what you might say.
Okay, so now that we're on about how prolific you are about writing novellas and just writing in general, when you're looking for a home for novellas, though, do you think, like, how do you like to go about it? Like, will you just ever just do like then a collection of novellas through, say, Kickstarter, or like,
or as an bonus to your original Kickstarter, a novella in the series?
like you can start doing that and then sell it to like Tor or like like Saga Press or whatever. Like, how do you go about that? Like when you're being strategic with your career, are you just like, I'm going to write this and then I'm going to see who hits it? Like, how do you go about that process of like where to send it and everything?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's sometimes a bit of luck. So like when Buffalo Soldier came out, it was Tor had just launched their novella line. And so Lee Harris, who's the head of Tor.com, well, Lee Harris is the same editor who I had for Knights of Breton Court. So so when he approached me and said, hey, can you write me something? I'm like, I got you. Now let me come up with something. So I felt pretty confident, like, this would have a pretty ready, hopefully a pretty safe home, should I stick the landing. That being said, like every other time though, it's been what I end up telling folks is like, look, I'm going to write what I write. And I'm going to write, and it's going to come out however long it comes out, but I'm going to write the story of my heart first. That is my priority. Can I write the story of my heart first? Once I've gotten that done, then only then do I think, all right, so where can I place it in the market? But the important thing for me is like, what is the story I want to write? And so with that being the case, that's how I end up choosing the markets. It's like, well, who could I send this to? And also, I'm not afraid to not publish it. And so I'm perfectly comfortable going, I'm going to write this story. In fact, I was just telling one of my mentees earlier tonight, as a matter of fact, because I was showing, hey, this is the vault, as it were, if I was Prince, in his legendary vault. This is my vault. This is where I have so many unpublished novels and novellas all here that I wrote, and they never found a home, or I wrote it not even, there was no strategy involved. Well, there was some strategy. Like Usual Suspects, I wrote Usual Suspects, which was my first middle grade book, and then I went ahead and wrote a sequel to Usual Suspects, and then I think I even outlined a third book, as a matter of fact, before the publisher was just like, yeah, we didn't want a sequel. We want another book entirely. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's not how I thought 2-book deals worked, but okay. So, live and learn. So I end up with, a spare novel down the road. But I wanted to write that book anyway, because that one was literally burdening my heart. So I was like, I have to get this out my system before I write anything new anyway. So let me get it out. So that was as close to strategy as I got there, because I thought I was trying to get ahead of the curve in terms of publishing, but no. But other than that, I don't think there's a real strategy. I mean, in retrospect, there seems to be a strategy, but I think I go so much off of intuition and then retroactively claim genius. So
now you mentioned a vault. right? Which I think is really interesting. Like, so when you're writing and you're like, I'm going to leave this in the vault. Is it because you're not happy with it? Or is it like, what is the reasoning? Because I have a Prince story after you answer this.
Okay. And actually, the Prince story started. So that story I talked about writing after I got done with Sweep of Stars was very much inspired by Prince, as a matter of fact. And it sort of reimagines his feud with Rick James, except as an intergalactic beef. It's just a crazy ass story that I really wanted to write, and it's just it's nuts. But it gave me an excuse to explore these alien races, so I'm like, okay, we're in. So here's what I mean. So when I wrote the novel Pimp My Airship, and I wrote that with two goals in mind. I wanted to see if I could adapt this short story, which everyone said had tremendous world building in it, and a lot of world that they never got to see. So could I adapt a short story into a novel, and then can I make my friend JJ laugh? So I wrote the entire book, 90,000 words. Wrote it, sent it to JJ. JJ laughed. I put it in the vault. And I had that one I hadn't even intended to publish. And actually, it was I think you guys were there. It was when I was doing a podcast when I was doing an episode of Writing Excuses, and I think it was the Writing Excuses on the cruise, as a matter of fact. And I was asked about my favorite hero's journey that I'd ever written, and my favorite hero's journey was the one in Pimp My Airship. So I talked about that one, and then when that episode aired, I started getting all these messages about where can we buy that book, and I was like, oh, I can't just tell them it's in the vault. And then that's when I began the process of seeing if there was a home for it. But like I said, it started with I wrote the book that was on my heart. Period. I'm not afraid to write something and put it away. But then, when the market's ready for it, it'll let you know, or you just have something for when the market is ready. Because even Usual Suspects, I first wrote that in like 2012 was when I wrote Usual Suspects. And then we'll just say that ghostwriting incident happened. And so I stepped away, I was stepped away for a bit. So then when I came back to writing full form, it was 2016. In 2012, that book was dead on arrival because the publishing industry had no interest in two young Black boys as detectives doing anything. But by 2016, the We Need Diverse Books movement has happened. And so suddenly the marketplace has changed. And suddenly, now there's a vacuum wanting books like this. And so then I had no problem selling the book then. So, a book that had languished, well, quote unquote, had languished, it was just a matter of waiting until the market was there for it. And so because sometimes you have to create the market.
I love it. So can you give us some hints of any upcoming project?
Hints of upcoming projects. What do I got? Let's see. My Captain America story just came out last month. So I'm really, really pleased with that. This year, I don't think I have any books coming out this year. I mean, there's an outside chance A City Dreaming could come out at the end of the year. It depends on how the editing process goes. But there's an outside chance it could come out at the end of the year. Like I said, I have a novella coming out with a magazine of fantasy and science fiction, Soul Rebel, the sequel to Buffalo Soldier. Me and Wayne Brady wrote. This is a whole ass sentence now that I think about it. Me and Wayne Brady wrote a story for Stephen King's anthology, and that comes out in August. And we are really hyped about that. And then hopefully, so those are probably the big projects coming out.
I have two more questions. One of them is the last question. But first, does anyone in our lovely group want to ask a question who didn't get to ask one? Because I tend to just overtake.
Okay, so what are you reading, or what is fueling your creative tank right now as you're pushing through all these projects?
So reading, I am currently reading Chain Gang All Stars. That's going to be a fun read. I'm also reading. remember reading Fear of a Black Consciousness, and what's the other one? So Fear of a Black Consciousness is a bit more of a heavy read, but that's there for actually all these are for a couple upcoming projects. But Fear of a Black Consciousness and Born in Blackness. So it's like one fiction, two nonfictions. That's kind of the my reading typically goes like that. Is one fiction and two nonfictions. And the nonfiction thing, it's weird because that started with a random conversation I had with Tobias Buckell one day, and he was just telling me about his stories, and I'm listening to him, and I'm just like, I don't think I have enough ideas in my stories because you listen to Tobias, and he's just like idea, and that all was in one short story, and I was like, bro, what? And so then I started looking at my own stories. I'm like, I don't think I have enough ideas, so I started reading a lot more nonfiction to sort of prime that pump, as it were. In fact, two books I read for Breath of Oblivion. One was called The Jazz of Physics, and then I read its sequel, Fear of a Black Universe, which were just, in terms of the whole idea of like merging jazz, hip hop, and physics. I was just like, oh yeah, that fueled me for days. So there's definitely a vibe of all of that in the trilogy. The other thing that fills my tank is part of my writing process now. And so largely, and this is mostly during the summer, but I try to do this actually year round, is I actually don't write by myself. I try to write in community. And so like today, we like sometimes it'll just happen on my front porch, but today we were down at this community spot, actually the spot where I do MoCon now that I think about it. And it was like me, 4 poets, a former middle school student, and a visual artist, and we're all just working alongside each other. We're all doing our own projects, but we're doing it together, right? So, you have that whole quiet accountability for all of us to actually get our shit done, right? So we have that going on, but then it's also the whole idea is like it's a room full of just creative energy, right? And so it's just like that fuels me. I mean, if you know how you like go to a conference and you come back from that conference and you're like super jazzed and like ready to write all the things because you've been surrounded by your people and got to chance to talk craft and ideas and bounce ideas off of each other, and you come home and you're like, bring on that deadline. That's what this is like all the time. And when I stumbled into that, I was just like, I feel energized all the time. And that, I think that is part of the frenetic thing, which is I'm surrounded by artists all the time, and we're challenging each other. We're making fun of each other. We're, helping each other out. And I'm like, yeah, this is not a bad way to do the thing. So yeah, that literally keeps my tank filled most of the time.
That's awesome.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question. What is it that you want to do writing-wise that you haven't yet? Is it like in another type of writing, like screenplay? Or is it you want to, write a murder mystery, like no speculativeness in it maybe? Or like what are you thinking of that you just haven't done yet that you want to do?
Well, I had an itch to write a play, but I did that a couple months ago. It's and I keep saying, I'm going to write this over the summer. I don't know what summer exists that I'm going to do all this stuff in, but I keep going, well, and then over the summer, I'm going to do, I want to write a memoir, a memoir / craft book. I want to do that. And I keep saying I'm going to do that this summer, apparently along with 2 novellas, but whatever. And so the memoir is probably the big thing that's on my head right now. But then after that, the thing that I really want to do is a cozy mystery.
Ah, nice.
So, and I keep playing around with this idea, and I think I got I think I accidentally have 30,000 words of it in my idea file at the moment, as I just keep noodling with different things. But so wow. I suspect this will happen, but. Yeah, cozy mystery. That's the big itch that I want to just at some point not this summer, but maybe next summer, will be cozy mystery time. Because by then I should have gotten all my books on deadline should be done by then. And so then it'd just be, I'm just going to write something just for the heck of it. And it'll probably end up in the vault, but I'll at least have gotten it out of my system.
You can always tell people that are on a school schedule when they say, in the summer, I'm going to do, because trust me, I'm with you, Maurice. In the summer, I have big plans.
Appreciate it. You have big
Whether
plans.
it happens or not,
every summer, big plans. And yet somehow at the end of every summer, I'm still running late on my deadlines for somehow. Yep. So
that's awesome.
So our last question, and I'm going to front this with, besides deadlines, what keeps you writing?
Oh, you know what? Here's the thing: is I'm actually not too moved by deadlines. Make me start writing, but they don't make me keep writing.
I love that.
All right. So because I knew I had to turn in A City Dreaming, so I knew at some point I was going to have to start it, and it wasn't until the deadline got close. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll start it. But that didn't mean I wasn't writing up until then. Because, like I said, I'd written a novella and several short stories because I love writing. And so what keeps me writing, besides deadlines, besides the joy of it, the thing is I think I just have, and it sounds kind of, I don't know, it's like, doesn't sound egotistical. I don't know. I just feel like I have something to say. And it comes out two different ways. I have stuff I say, and I have stuff that I'm feeling. And the stuff that I'm feeling, I need to process. The only way I know how to process things is through writing. So I write to process who I am, what I'm thinking, what I'm going through. I'm processing life, and I'm doing it on the page. And then I have stuff that I want to say. There's things I feel. There's things I want to comment on, and I can do that through the page. And so those are things that keep me writing. Like life keeps lifing, and as long as it keeps lifing, I'm going to react to it, and that reaction is going to be words on a page.
I love it.
Well, I'm just going to say, I can't wait to have you back again. I still can't believe it's been as long as it has been. But we love having you here, Maurice, and you're amazing. And we will have you back sooner rather than later. And I just want to say, for all of us, thank you again for coming back and hanging out with us for a bit.
Well, this is literally my favorite podcast. I think I've done this podcast more than any other. Right? I think it was you guys then writing excuses. It's pretty much the order it goes in.
I love
how many times I've been here. So
I love it.
I'm here for you guys. And I got that out of my system. Didn't cry once. Brent.
And this has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. You can find us at justkeepwriting.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to any of us on our social medias, and please jump in our Just Keep Writing Discord channel. Links to all of that is in the show notes. Lastly, please support our show by going to patreon.com/justkeepwriting. We offer daily writing prompts, early access to podcast episodes, and much more. Thanks for listening, and just keep writing.